Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. When you're tuned in, you're with Lady Business and Give It to the People Radio, where you're going to get enlightened, enhanced, empowered, and enriched. Make sure that you always tune in to Give It to the People Radio. All right, so everybody, welcome back to another episode of Give It to the People Radio. We are in our virtual studio right now because of the fact that COVID has come through and crushed the whole scene. So today we are interviewing somebody that she started following me. I started following her. I don't know who was following who, but all I know is we've been just putting out good content, and she is a radio host. She's an entrepreneur, a music lover, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Kim Dynasty. So Kim, give them a little information about yourself.
Hey everybody, it's your girl Kim Dynasty, WEMS Radio. I'm so happy to be in the building.
All right. The virtual building. You better be in the virtual building.
That's right, virtual.
Woo. So when did you start doing radio? Because you have your own radio show, and she was sending a message and she was just like, look, I need to get you on the radio show when you come to New York. And I'm like, okay, well, you need to get on the radio show when you come to North Carolina. So, right. You know, what we ended up having to do was we're on the radio show. I guess we could be in between New York and North Carolina virtually, right? But when did you start doing your radio show?
I started a year ago, and I literally... It was, what they call it, happy accident?
Uh-huh.
That's what literally happened. It was an accident that I got on the radio, and then I was forced to rise to the occasion because the person I was doing it with ended up leaving the show. So it was like, okay, now I'm here. Now I got to do this. I got to finish this up. So, and it just took off from there.
So what do you think about that? Did the person just not have the time to do it? Did they think that you were just such a great personality that you could host it by yourself? Why do you think, you know, some people, because we did a radio show years ago, and it was like 4 of us, and it just did not mesh well after a certain amount of time. And, you know, maybe that was just meant for you to just shine on your own.
And I believe that. I honestly believe that. I believe everything happens for a reason. It was just a situation where I'm, you know, thinking back because we're not speaking to each other. Thinking back, this is just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It's challenging when you branch off and want to do your own thing. Like, as long as you're there supporting someone else, that's fine. But when it's your time, people aren't as supportive.
Wow.
I'm going to put it that way. And, you know, maybe for selfish reasons, maybe not. I'm not sure. At this point, it is what it is. But I wish her nothing but the best. But I got to do what I got to do for myself as well. So.
But that's that tenacity. That's that little fire. And, you know, I think that oftentimes we want to try to hold on to people and try to do it together and try to build something. And then it just comes a time where you have to realize, like, look, you know, one thing is I got to build my own castle. So I need a foundation for me. And, you know, then, you know, we can see what happens with everybody else. So just recognizing that and having that discernment, like, you know, that's something that I think is very interesting that happens with a lot of people. Now, you mentioned that it was a woman. Do you think that sometimes it's harder for women to work together? Like, I work with women all the time, so I don't have a big problem, but I do see that I think sometimes women do get threatened by other women, or maybe they just, you know, want to do something totally, completely different.
Right. I do think it can be challenging. I think it's about personality, experience, and that's what makes a relationship work. It's all about vibes, things like that. You know, she's younger than me. There's a lot of things I try to school her on because I'm coming from an older, been there, done that, more, I'm not going to say more professional.
But more experienced.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's ways to handle things without putting so much emotion into it. You know, I'm not, if you and I have a disagreement, I'm not so quick to block you. First of all, because I show off. You know, you can see everything I'm doing. That's my thing.
Uh-huh.
But it's more or less that we can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
We can just move on from there. That's my take. I'm not of that, and this is no disrespect to anyone younger.
Yeah.
But I'm not of that generation of being super petty and, oh, you this, you that. And I'm not with all that. You can miss me with all of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because that's not helping me. I can't entertain that because that's not helping me get to where I need to be.
No, I feel you. But on the flip side of that, I have to say I am Petty LaBelle. I just blocked somebody the other day. So look, from the younger to the older perspective, I understand it, but I block them. It does not matter what age it is. But I think that, one thing I think that with us is social media has created this dynamic where people feel like if you're not following them all of a sudden, oh my God, their world just, is done. Like, oh, they stopped following them. The relationship is over. And it's just like, can't we just live life without even having to worry about me seeing your stuff all the time? Because that's what happens when you're connected. So right. I'm just one of those people that's like, look, I don't want to see your stuff. And if I'm not dealing with you, you don't need to see mine. So that's why somebody got blocked the other day. Because I was like, first of all, what are you doing here? Who sent you? And I think that, you still, you're saying a different thing. So you've reached a different level of maturity because I will block you in a minute. But it does make sense, though, when you talk about, you're not even worried about them. And I'm not worried about them. It's just, I'm just like, nope, just stay out of my whole world. I act like you don't exist personally.
And there's nothing wrong with feeling that way. This was my first time. I had to block somebody earlier in the year.
Okay.
And they just, have become antagonistic to the point where they reached out to the station. Oh, Kim this, Kim that. And I laughed it off. My station manager was like, yo, what you think is so funny? And then I broke it down to him. I was like, yo, remember that dude? Da, 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 da. And he was like, oh, yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, exactly. I said, see? And I said, this is why I had to block him. You know what I'm saying? So there comes a time where, you got to erase about your life. That's without a doubt.
Do you find that it's hard, though, because, essentially you're a journalist, right? So when you're hosting a radio show, you're interviewing people, you're giving them a platform. Do you find that it is more difficult to just kind of maneuver sometimes when you have those people that want to be a little bit more antagonistic or feel like maybe you owe them a little bit of something because, they want to be on the show? Do you have any issues like that?
Okay, so my show is a little bit, different. I do a basic interview, which goes over some, key questions or core questions, where you're from, what you got going on, your Instagram handles, it's like 5 basic questions that I usually ask. And then I go into my show. So really, if you're a guest on my show, I'm bringing you into my world.
Exactly.
I go over current events. I ask them what's most influential to them. I go over a couple of questions with that. And then I go into my Venus versus Mars, which is relationship topics. So they're a part of my show. Essentially.
Yeah. So this way they need to, because I've seen sometimes when people try to just take over a show. And I am a talker. So, I think that's a New York thing. Like you just end up being a talker. And so you kind of want to get your point out. You say some stuff. And then, but I think that a lot of times, have you ever found that some people need media training because maybe they're not as well versed in just being able to think off cuff or being able to like really articulate what they mean? You know how Kanye does that sometimes? I mean, he's really the best example, where he means well, but it's like, oh my God, did somebody give you some media training? So do you do anything like that to try to, help people out? Because sometimes it can make them look bad if they're not the ones that are responding, quickly. I do feel people need media training. I work with a lot of artists. They're usually my guests. So I feel like this is kind of like artist development. Before you get to the big time, come through with me, let's chop it up and, take it from there. And you could always take the content with you and you could even see yourself where you need improvement, where you should have worked on certain things. Also, it's all about comfortability and developing a relationship with that person. Because I've had guests that have given me one-word answers. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it just leaves that space and it's like awkward at that moment. But once I develop a relationship with them and they keep coming back and we keep working on it, like I don't have a problem getting the same guest 2-3 times, if we have that relationship.
Yeah. No, but I think that that's good. And so when you mention artist development, I think there are so many, let's just say, I'll use the word indie/underground artists who need to have platforms like yours so that this way people can find out about them. Because, you know, when we were coming up, I would say the college radio was really kind of where you kind of started and you kind of met your chops in the beginning with the college radio, because if you could get it popping in the colleges, then it could get in the clubs. Now it's transferred, instead of it just being in the colleges, now it's the strip clubs. If you can get it popping there, then it can be popping everywhere else. But everybody doesn't necessarily want that kind of attention. So when you're talking with some of the artists, you know, are they trying to just like skyrocket to the top immediately, or do they recognize that they need to, you know, just kind of go along this development path and start to really build their audience?
Child. Let me tell you about some of these artists. Some of these artists feel like they're already bigger than Jay-Z.
Oh.
Soon as you ask them, I've had artists say to me, well, how much are you giving me to do an interview? I said, are you serious? I'm like, you know, they feel a certain level of entitlement that I feel that sometimes they're not there. And that's a nice way of putting what I really want to
I read the lines.
Yeah, so it's like, get your chop, get yourself together, let me help you along the way. And, you take it from there. I break it down to my son even. I say, it comes down to dollars and cents. Mm-hmm. If you're an artist, you may be great. You might be the best. But guess what? Are you profitable? Mm. And I said, that's exactly what the labels are looking at. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what other stations, other media outlets, that's what they're looking at. Mm-hmm. Are you going to bring me followers? Are you going to bring me, something? Are you bringing something to the table? And I said, these are the things that you got to look at, and you got to develop yourself to become that person.
No, that's some of the best advice. And so I knew that the way that this interview was going to go, that it was going to be kind of like a playbook for artists to really think about what they need to do when they go on interviews, because oftentimes they don't know what to say, or they say the wrong thing, and, they may feel entitled. So that's why when I was saying, is anybody antagonistic a little bit? That's exactly where I was going with it, because sometimes people feel like they're so great that, oh, well, why am I doing this show? It's kind of like the same thing where people were talking about, like when they're on the carpet, they kind of pass the black media and then they go to the mainstream media. And you have to look at the fact that we're, oftentimes starting this just because we love it. Yeah. And, willing to build it.
Can I tell you a story?
Yes.
I'm going to tell you my first celebrity interview. It was with Stokely from Mint Condition.
I love Stokely. Yes.
I love Stokely. I love Mint Condition. So once I got the interview, I was so grateful. Let me tell you something. There was so many odds against me. Even my car started acting up the day before. Like, it was so much against me. I said, God, if it's not meant for me to go, I was in the mechanic shop. I said, if it's not meant for me to go, let me know. And then, I'll just call off the whole interview. Mm-hmm. So turns out my car was fine. I was just tripping. So I went down there, and I swear to you, I had $22 in my bank account. Mm. And my friend cashed out me $25. So now I go down to D.C., I stay at her house, I drop my bags off, we get dressed, we go to the interview, and she's like, Kim, we're late. We're not going to get in. They're not going to let us in. I say, just let's pray on it.
Pray on it.
Look, I had $22. She gave me $25. We couldn't find parking. Got there late. It was like everything was against us. And then the guy came to the door and he said, right this way, Miss Dynasty.
Come on.
Ah!
You better walk in your purpose and get that interview.
Let me tell you something. I cried from New York to D.C. the whole way. Like, oh, God, thank you, God. Thank you for this interview. Cried the whole 4.5 hours listening to Fred Hammond.
Oh.
The whole way.
Wow.
So, it is, the blessings are there. They're going to come. And things will happen for you. And it's just a matter of believing in yourself and stuff like that. I didn't know. I didn't know that I could reach that level, if that is considered a level. You know what I'm saying?
It's a level because there's plenty of people. And you know what? I think that, and you just tell me if you feel the same way. one thing I thought about was there are